will be getting from Mr. Jarret this afternoon his impressions of just how an electoral commission body, which he heads now, which he chairs now, supposed to be operating for and on behalf of its people. Without further ado, let me open up Mr. Jarret's mic and say good afternoon to you, Honorable Jarret.
Good afternoon to you, and thank you for having me on your program.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure having you this afternoon, sir.
Thank you. In particular, at a time where the region is experiencing a hurricane. As you know, Hurricane Elsa passed by closely to Jamaica. It's on its way now to pass over Cuba and then into Florida.
Yes, but just before we get into the gist of the conversation, anything worth noting at this time based on the passage of Elsa through Jamaica?
Elsa has done, has basically contributed to high levels of flooding in some certain areas. Okay. I've not got any reports about any deaths or any serious loss of property, but it certainly has created a number of flooding zones in the island. So we are quite lucky.
Yes,
you'll note that Elsa did some damage in Barbados, and our hearts go to the people of Barbados and hope that they're able to recover well.
Yes, indeed, and we know pray as well for the people of Cuba as it moves up north. Huh?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yes. Mr. Jarret, again, I want to thank you for coming on this afternoon to basically have a discussion with me and the many folks viewing and listening as well about not something that is not new to you. You are the chairman of the commission in Jamaica, and basically that is right down your alley, the conversation we're going to have this afternoon. And just before we start, in terms of your just a little something about you to get the listeners kind of a little more attentive to you. What can you say about you, sir, Mr. Jarret, in terms of an introduction?
I'm a Caribbean man and committed to the development of the region. And in my profession, I'm a chartered accountant by profession. I run a large financial conglomerate in Jamaica with offices and businesses in the United States, in Canada, United Kingdom, and the Cayman Islands. But my most important job, I believe, is the job as chairman of the Electoral Commission of Jamaica. We spoke earlier about the hurricane passing through the region. It's through the work of electoral management bodies like the ECJ, as it's called in Jamaica, they were able to have governments elected and the process is trusted. And through that democratic process, we find persons who will make the right decisions for us as we travel, as we deal with things like the hurricane and the development of our region. As you know, our region is a region of some of the world's smallest developing countries. I think they call it small island developing states. And as you know, many of our countries in the region are highly indebted. As you know too, we all suffer from natural disasters, hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes, as we saw recently in St. Vincent. And that has had a deleterious effect on our economies. Yes. In that we have to take a lot of our taxpayers' dollars to develop, to repair and replace assets lost during these as a result of these natural disasters. As you also know, our region is primarily agrarian and primarily past colonial entities. We didn't come to the game, to the global economy, with a lot of resources. And so our choices are very important, and the decisions that we make are very important as we go forward.
Yes, indeed. And thank you, Mr. Jarret, at least for those opening remarks. In terms of getting down into the discussion itself, let me first of all, off the bat, thank you for your commission, their involvement, their participation in, for some months now, coming on board this program, CIVIC Vibes, and just kind of helping us in Dominica understand your system, first of all, but even more importantly, helping us understand what indeed an electoral commission, the members, supposed to be doing for and on behalf of its people. So I want to thank you. We had Mr. Glasspool the last time, we had a young lady before, today we have you. And so again, I just want to thank you guys for at least partnering with CIVIC Vibes with that all important education and information going on.
I'm most welcome. And thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Jarret, in terms of the composition of your commission over there in Jamaica, can you give the listening public and viewing public an idea of the composition?
Well, first of all, I need to give you a little bit of history.
Sure.
The Electoral Commission of Jamaica was created by an act of parliament. It's a commission of parliament in 1976. If you remember, 1976 was a pretty challenging year for the politics in Jamaica. It was a highly contested election. It was an election which was fought on ideological grounds. And it was, for some, a pretty tough campaign, a pretty tough process. You did have some loss of lives, and the two political leaders after that election came together and decided that they had to improve on the electoral process. They had to make it more trustworthy and to remove some of the decisions from the parliament itself into this commission, which was selected to run electoral process in Jamaica. And by doing that, what they have done is that the Governor General appoints 4 what they call selected commissioners, independent persons who, in his judgment and with the support of the political parties, are of impeccable standards. And they would then give oversight to the electoral management body, the EOJ, the Electoral Office of Jamaica, which is where Mr. Glasspool Brown is the director in charge. So those nominated or selected commissioners, they are not eligible to vote in an election in Jamaica. They have lost their right to vote, in that you want them to be independent in their thinking. And then you have 4 nominated commissioners, nominated by the 2 major political parties. One, the Prime Minister's, the governing party, and the opposition party nominates 2 each. So you have 4 nominated commissioners. And of course, the director is also a commissioner. So that's what constitutes the commission of the Electoral Commission of Jamaica. Highly independent, but at the same time, you have the views of the political parties coming to discussions, because the nominated commissioners will share their views and will, by necessity, will be guided by their party's views. And that process, which is a good process in that we do have active discussions, active debates, as we seek to protect the integrity of the voting of the electoral process in Jamaica, but at the same time taking on board the views of the political parties. And therefore, as a result of that, you need not have any major discussion in the parliament, because whatever we decide at the commission is already embracing the views of the 2 political parties, adjudicated by the independent commissioners, the selected commissioners like myself, who will make sure that what we're doing at all times is in the best interest of Jamaica, the best interest of the process. Of course, the commission in the law, it specifies exactly what it shall do. And just to give you a few other things, it establishes policies for the governing the registration of electors in accordance with the Constitution of Jamaica. It gives the directions to the director on the performance of his functions under the Representation of the People Act. It conducts general elections and by-elections. It compiles and maintains a list of eligible voters. It approves political parties eligible to receive state funding. It administers electoral funding and financial disclosures, monitor election expenditure by candidates of their official agents. It also is responsible for the determination of polling divisions and boundaries, which, as you know, the boundaries is very important in that electoral boundaries is a way in which we can protect the system from gerrymandering. And it also determines the upper and lower limits of the numbers of electorates in a particular division. It is also mandated to the public education and training. And so it's a wide remit. And most recently, it is also charged with the responsibility of the registering of political parties and the monitoring of campaign financing in Jamaica. It reports annually to the Parliament, who actually funds the ECJ and EOJ. And so it's a big responsibility. It's something that we don't take lightly at all. In fact, we are so concerned, and each person on the commission is so concerned that they ensure that there's no room for failure. The Electoral Office of Jamaica, the ECJ, is also mandated to issue an identification card to the voters. And that card today is considered the sort of standard identification card for Jamaica. So it's a wide responsibility. It's a structure that we have these 9 commissioners, and then we break out into committees of the commission. You have a committee that's responsible for finance and administration. You have a committee responsible for legislation, because the EOJ, ECJ actually proposes legislation to the Parliament and works with the Chief Parliamentary Council in the documentation and the preparation of those legislations. It also has a committee that's focused on technology, and particularly at this time, we are seeing what's happening around the world with the hackers and intrusion into systems. We have to ensure that our technology is protected. We also have implemented electronic elements to our voting process, electronic balloting distribution systems are also delivered by the ECJ. So it's a wide range, and there's also a committee that's responsible for public relations and public education. And there's a boundary committee that meets from time to time. So it's 6 subcommittees that are part of the overall ECJ, and each commissioner has a responsibility on some of these committees. So it's a big job.
It's a big job, and I will concur with you here. It's a big job, because based on what you said here, I can well understand or got a better understanding of the bigness of the job that you guys are undertaking as we speak. Jamaica is known to many as being a model in the region when it comes to electoral matters, Mr. Jarret. You mentioned a number of duties that you guys perform at the commission, but I really want to zero in at least on 2 of these duties. One, it is the regulating of financing to political parties or persons who may contest elections, and also your voter ID card system. I know you guys are sort of ahead, but can you just kind of go back a bit, track back a bit, to give the listening public an idea of where you guys started, what you did, when you did, as it pertains to the identity of persons showing up at any polling station to vote, sir? Well,
the law gives us mandates us to have an identification card for the voters. But it's not that the voter will not be able to vote if he turns up without his identification card, as we do have a book at the polling stations where the photograph of each elector is maintained. And the elector will also swear, make a swearing to the presiding officers before he votes. But that ID card process has been well developed over time. It's a card that is it has biometric data features in it, and it's not easily copied. And if it is copied, we can easily determine whether the card is a genuine card or otherwise. And this process of identification of the 1.9 million persons on the voters list is one that is distributed across the island through centers where we have persons there who take the photographs, who validate the person who's before them, and then there's a process of the distribution of the cards. So that card is now sort of the de facto ID card for Jamaica. People use it to open bank accounts and to do whatever they need to do. But it also serves the purpose of ensuring that the process of voting is a trusted one, that the person who presents himself to vote is who he says he is, and that he cannot vote twice, because having voted, he can't come back again and vote. So it is one of our serious tools, and our serious and we are proud of the achievement of having such an effective ID card system.
Okay, in terms of if we just stay there a little bit, in terms of the card itself, you spoke about the biometrics aspect of it, but
yeah.
Did you guys start with the biometrics aspect, or it came after a period of time?
It evolved as the technology evolved. So whatever we do, each time, I mentioned that we have a technology committee, and we have a technology deputy assistant director who is constantly looking at the development of technology around the world. And as the technology improves, so do we improve our activities. So it's a dynamic and evolutionary process. So where we are today is that we have this card. Well, it's not just today, it's been there for a little while, but we're constantly looking at what is to come down the road, and how do we keep ourselves abreast, because as you know, as the technology grows, so does the ability of the persons of bad actors, and therefore we have to stay one step ahead of the bad actors. So in terms of the ID card, we actually put out an international tender, and major providers around the world apply to provide the card stock and the technology. We have also worked with international providers to ensure that the printing of the ID cards is appropriate and well done. So it's a rather complex process, and we have invested. The people of Jamaica have invested heavily in making this process work well.
And would you say that, well, I know no system is 100% proof, but would you recommend that system of being able to identify somebody at any election to, for example, we in Dominica who at present don't have a card system in place for voting?
Well, I would think that what you need to do in Dominica is to do your own risk assessment. It was necessary in Jamaica. There are many countries in the world that don't use an ID card for voting, many developed countries. But in our case, we determined that it was important to do it. And because we wanted an electoral system which was trusted by all. And in fact, internationally, we have been commended for the electoral process in Jamaica. Governments on a margin of 1, without any sort of, negative feedback from the public. They trust the system so much. And it's these tools that we have put in place that enables us to be so trusted by the people of Jamaica and by others as well too. So it's for you now. I mean, if you're in a community where, you know each other, and it's a small community, and then you have to think about the cost of this, because as I said, this is not a cheap process. It's very, very expensive. And of course, when you do your risk assessment, you can determine whether you want to make that type of heavy investment. But for us and for countries like us, I would definitely recommend it.
Give the listening and viewing public an idea of what was happening then, why you guys saw the need to come up with, identification.
There are a number of reports that have been done on the electoral process in Jamaica, particularly in the period post-independence, period 1972 onwards to 1976 was one, as the world, as you know, went through a period of polarization, left and right, and there's a report that was done on political tribalism in Jamaica by the Honorable Justice Carr that sought to identify the reasons for political tribalism, scarce benefits, access to public resources, and just simply identity. People identify themselves with political parties, and some persons will die for their political party because it's actually a part of their identity. And you had an issue where in certain constituencies, which were described as garrison constituencies, you could all 99% of the voters were voting for one particular party or the other. You had situations where people voted openly. So it was not something that was sustainable. If it had not been fixed, which is where the political leaders of the day, Mr. Siaga, Mr. Manley, both distinguished gentlemen, decided that this cannot continue and decided to make some changes. First of all, an electoral advisory commission was put in place, and then the ECJ itself, which was more powerful, had some teeth in it to deal with any, well, first of all, put in place a good system, and then to monitor it and to deal with any deviations from the system. So the environment was created by virtue of what was happening in the society at the time. But I can tell you, looking back today, when you look at what we do in Jamaica versus what happens around the world, where elections are being challenged even after the electoral process is over, I think we made the right decision, and I think that we have taken the matter very seriously, and Jamaica is all the better for it.
True. Thank you for that, Mr. Jarret. Just before we get to the campaign financing part of it and the regulations thereof, let me just alert the listening public and viewing public that the numbers are 449-3095, 3096, 3097, the digital line 616-4057. Those of you overseas and want to call in to contribute or ask a question or say something about the conversation here, your number is 305-432-9624. Those of you as well viewing us on Facebook, I am monitoring the Facebook live feed as best of my ability. And so I'll try to get some of your comments or questions from there as well. So after we, kind of polish up the discussion with Mr. Jarret on the campaign financing aspect of things here, we're going to open up the lines in just a bit for your comments as well. So yes, Mr. Jarret, where do you want to start now in terms of what you guys did in order to help stem the tide of big money, basically, for want of a better term, purchasing you guys' election in Jamaica?
Well, I should share with you the fact that as early as in 1990s, civil society and international partners, I can remember even before I knew that I would ever be involved with the Electoral Office and Commission of Jamaica, I participated in a discussion at the Carter Center in Atlanta, Georgia, where campaign financing, use of media was discussed, because what they found then was that persons were using, shall I say, funding to advantage. And therefore what we wanted to do was to make sure that we have an even playing field. In the United States at the Carter Center, there was discussion as to how much media a party could utilize, because as you know, the cost of media is one of the biggest drivers of the cost of an election. And so we, in Jamaica, the Electoral Commission, through its legislation committee, began the process of looking at a law for campaign financing. And they came up with a process where limits were established for parties and for candidates. Accountability was established in that you have to report to the commission, providing evidence of the spend. There was also established in the commission a registrar for campaign financing. whose responsibility it was to collect those reports, to audit them, investigate them, and there are penalties if you fail to report. That those are all things that we put into the campaign financing law. So they have a whole slew of reporting, whole slew of forms that must be submitted. And now we are putting in place, and we're into the third year of this process. So we're still learning as we go along. We're putting in place the organizational structure to support this campaign financing regulation. It's no different from any regulator, like your central bank or any of your financial services commission that regulates how the political party and candidates spend their money, and to report as to the source of the money and what it was used for. So far, as I said, this was agreed by the Parliament. So far we have had no objections. The job that we now have to do is to do our part in terms of ensuring that the candidates properly report and ensure that where necessary, if they fail to comply, we exercise the powers that are in the law to deal with those candidates. So it's an evolutionary process, and that fits nicely with the whole introduction of political party registration. And we're also responsible for that. So a political party must register and must submit annually its audited financial statements to the Commission. And so you now have the party's accounts, and you have the candidates reported at the campaign level. And you have some limits that are set for campaign financing. So those are some of the things that were put in place to ensure that that it's an even playing field, that we don't have influencers sort of distorting the electoral process. So those are things that we are. And I know in Dominica you do have a few large companies down there, and you don't want a situation where one or two large entities influence the outcome of your electoral process.
All right, Mr. Jarret, just before I open up those lines, it is already 5 minutes to the hour 5 o'clock. We have a 45-minute, or we're supposed to be having a 45-minute stint with you. So that means like in the next 20 minutes, by and large, we're going to release you. Maybe you'll come on some other time to continue in that sharing of information. But I've been listening to you intently in terms of what you guys, have in Jamaica. Let me just share with you some of what we got in Dominica before we open up the lines, because I believe it is worth sharing information that at least you can get a much better understanding of what we are experiencing in Dominica at this time as well. In terms of the campaigning financing aspect of things where elections are concerned, we in Dominica, we don't have that. We have been witnessing over a number of electoral cycles whereby big monies, and I am talking here, in the 2014 general election, for example, we heard a ballpark figure of 70 million EC dollars was spent on the campaign by the Dominica Labour Party. They have not refuted it as a party. And so, what is out there, that is the figure I will go by with this afternoon. We also have the situation as well where, any political party in Dominica at this time, they don't have to report to anybody where they get the money in terms of spending those monies on the constituents in the various constituencies. And if that situation is not checked or put in check, as it were, through some system like what you are espousing this afternoon, the inevitable is on the cards, in that persons with deep pockets, very deep pockets, will be basically be able to purchase our elections in Dominica. And that is what I am saying. That is where our elections may be going if things are not, kind of stemmed at this time. We also have a situation where we have the CBI program in Dominica. That is a program where our government over the years have been selling our passports to different individuals across the globe. That in and out of itself is another place or another area where big monies can come in or has been coming in through our electoral process. It is also of note as well that with that program, we in Dominica, a population with, on paper, we say 70,000 people. But in reality, I can say 55, 60,000 persons, roughly about there. And we had a last tabulation in terms of persons out there having our passports in their possession at this time who are non-born Dominicans. And that figure was 17,455 persons. So I'm giving you those figures because these figures were tabled in Parliament. So these are correct and true figures. But I'm giving you those figures just so that you and the persons out there who are listening could have an idea of what we are going through if our elections in Dominica are not cleaned up. Because 17,000 persons, pretty close to 20,000 persons, vis-a-vis a population of 55, 60,000 persons, you're looking at roughly pretty close to a quarter of the population right there. Right? So we stand a very strong chance as well of we in Dominica, our vote may mean very little or nothing at all if, you know, some of what you are saying here this afternoon are not put in place in Dominica. We also have a move by the governing party Dominica that brought in a legal mind in the name of Mr. Dennis Byron. That is the latest move by the government to sort of have him make recommendations as a way forward to the topic that we're discussing this afternoon. A lot of persons in Dominica are very skeptical of that move because at the end of the day, just like you in Jamaica, our constitution, our laws prescribes or says that it is the commission, the Electoral Commission in Dominica, that is mandated to do things or involve themselves with the electoral processes in Dominica. Lo and behold, I must tell you that the Prime Minister, that is Mr. Roosevelt Skerry, he got in the way and sort of nominated this guy and already paid him some, I'm hearing about $250,000 for making those recommendations. So a lot of persons in Dominica are kind of skeptical about that move by a politician sort of meddling or mingling in the electoral process. And you know, a lot of persons, including myself, we are very skeptical about that move. That move, we are saying, should have come from the commission. The commission should have made that call because the constitution prescribes or says that our electoral commission is supposed to be, like you in Jamaica, an independent body making very independent decisions. But, you know, our tale in Dominica, where the sort of subtle interference by politicians, not just in the Electoral Commission, but in other aspects of our governance, it is much too long of a tale for me to tell you in the next 15 or 20 minutes. But that, in a nutshell, is where we at as it pertains to the lack of regulations for financing our elections. And also as well, I must tell you, as we speak, there is no system in place for properly identifying a voter. So my name is Loftus Duran. Once I shows up at a polling station and the name Loftus Duran is on the registry, I am given the opportunity. I may not be the real or the true Loftus Duran, but once I say my name is Loftus Duran, I am given that opportunity. And so you can well imagine the kind of, you know, trouble, as it were, that we have been encountering in our election, just trying to make it a freer and fairer process. And so hence your word this afternoon, like your other colleagues, you know, you guys are helping us, but it is the Electoral Commission in Dominica which have to, you know, sort of reach out to you and kind of get the help, because I can tell you the help is sure needed in Dominica. And just on that note, have any of our members in our commission reach out to you guys for help?
No, no, but I know that there's an association in the Caribbean that we work together. But just on that point that you raised now, I mean, you mentioned is it Sir Dennis Byron?
Yes.
He's a gentleman I know, and he's a man of high repute. And I don't know what his brief was, but you can trust him.
We can trust Sir Dennis Byron based on you knowing him.
I know him.
Okay. Well, I will take your word for that, Mr. Jarret, in terms of putting a little more faith in him. As I said publicly already, Mr. Jarret, it's not that I don't trust Mr. Dennis Byron. I mean to say he's a man he's touted about as a legal luminary.
Yes.
What I really have a problem with is the process by which he was, engaged. That is where I have a problem. But as to his recommendations that he will be making,
yes,
Mr. Dennis Byron is, as we speak, enjoying a certain kind of freeness and fairness in their elections in St. Kitts. And I want to think he would want even better for us in Dominica. So
absolutely.
we wait to be prepared.
Absolutely.
All right, it is 5 minutes already past the good old hour, 5 o'clock, folks. I'm going to give you a little opportunity as I'm going to open up the lines right about now. The numbers are 449-3095, 3096, 3097. Let me just give my voice a break and that of Mr. Jarret at this time. Let's take a little break as we wait on some of your comments or calls at this time. All right, you're listening to the program called CIVIC Vibes that is aired each and every Sunday from the new time, 4 o'clock. And we are discussing our whole electoral reform matters. But more importantly, Mr. Jarret, he is the commission. He chairs the commission in Jamaica at this time. And he's giving us much food for thought this afternoon here as to how we in Dominica can make things simpler for us here in Dominica. Let's go to the telephone lines. We're already going to take a call or two because in a while we've got to shut it down with Mr. Jarret. Let's take this line. Caller, yes, good afternoon, you're on.
Mr.
My brother, thank you for calling. You know there's a gag order on you on queue, and so I will not be entertaining you this afternoon, sir. You have enough time on the other side where you are to expose your thoughts. Thank you very much. Let's go, take another line. Caller, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Lofty.
Good afternoon.
Lofty, I want the gentleman to excuse us for being skeptical. We are dealing with a serial trickster. So please excuse us if we tend to be skeptical about people that he brings in to deal with our electoral reform. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Jarret is taking notes. He will be commenting in just a bit. Caller, good afternoon. Caller, are you there? Caller, fix that line and please call me back. Yes, let's take this line. Caller, yes, good afternoon.
Yes, this is me.
Yes.
You hearing me well?
I'm hearing you.
Yes. I heard Mr. Jarret say you can trust Mr. What's his name again?
Byron.
Byron. It is all well and good to say that, is that you could trust him. But remember the man who gave him the job and the work to do. So that man will never give him a job and do not have an input to tell him what to do. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for your comments here. Let's take a couple more calls here. Caller, yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Durant.
Good afternoon, sir.
And good afternoon to you. Now, I have two questions. I really did answer for that, which we all in Dominica do. Ask you the questions you get. How much will it cost to do ID cards for approximately 60,000 persons? And how fast, how quick it can be done from time of request before the election? And I would really love to answer for that. The other thing is, I really not comfortable. I understand this, your guest said that we can trust a certain person, Mr. David Byron. But what I'm saying is that I, in my own view, have already seen confusion because he's handpicked by the Prime Minister of Dominica when it was supposed to be an Electoral Commission decision. From there.
All right, caller. Thank you. Thank you very much. Point made. You have your 2 questions on the table. In the interest of time, let us condense those questions, make your point in a relatively succinct manner, and we've got to move on. Let's take a couple more calls. Mr. Jarret is taking note. He will be answering in just a while. All right. Let's take this line, the overseas line. Caller. Caller, are you there? Good afternoon. All right, seems you're not listening. We got to move a pace this afternoon, huh? All right, let me just try and engage that overseas line one more time. Caller, good afternoon.
Yes, good.
Yes, very clear.
Yeah, well, I want to thank you, brother, for bringing light. You know, I have been in wilderness on that issue, and I am calling for exactly what he's calling for. To me, to answer Blue, it's not even an issue of trust in Byron. It's more an issue of we have to approach these things from postures of strength. Postures of strength. When you talk about trust in Byron, it feels like we're begging Byron. You know, we picture. We're supposed to be in that house whenever Byron call anything up. We have to be there for placards. We have to send a message that they will be civil disobedience in Dominica if electoral reform is not done right. That's why we cannot be out of the Byron conversation. I have told you, brother, I'm happy here and bring up today. And let's see, that is where we have to go moving forward. It's not an option. We have to be at the table, whether in consent or in protest.
All right, caller. Peace and blessings. Thank you very much. And just before I get back to you, Mr. Jarret, let me just read a comment coming in here from someone listening as well. And then I'll ask you to respond to this comment and the other comments made thus far. And this person listening says, maybe I should be telling Mr. Jarret about Mr. Byron has been contracted by Roosevelt Kerry to do exactly what the OECS and OAS did over a number of years, right? Over a number of years, yes. And these things have not been done. Byron has no experience in election matters. That is what some person is writing here. Your response or rebuttal, Mr. Jarret.
As I said, I have known Mr. Byron. We have worked on a particular commission together. He's a distinguished legal mind, and he will. The process to appoint him, I don't know what that process was, and that's for the people of Dominica to determine what that is. But in terms of what he will bring to the table, he will not be biased, or he's going to try to get the best advice that he can to deliver on the mandate that has been given. So my comment is in relation to his character, and I would stand by what I said earlier.
Okay, thank you very much for that. That is vouching for him.
Yeah, for him.
On his character, yes.
No, in terms of that.
Yes, there was another caller who spoke about if you can give us in Dominican idea of how much it would cost and the time factor to implement or get on board some cards before our election is constitutional due 23-24. So in the next 2 years.
It could be done with 60,000, well, or less, because I'm certain it's only persons 18 and over.
Yes.
So it could be done. I can't say exactly what it would cost, but you could also not sell in Jamaica, but Jamaica, I'm certain, will be willing to work with you in that regard. Okay. The electoral office in Jamaica would certainly be able to deal with, I'd say, what, 40,000 30,000 ID cards, they could certainly help in that process. And it would certainly be, the machine alone, is a couple $1 million US. So I'm certain you might not want to go down that road in terms of the ID cards that we have. In other words, one could do an ID card, but if you wanted it to have all the bells and whistles and the security features, it would certainly cost. But yes, you can, and I'm certain you do have firms in Dominica that produce ID cards. But it's the type of ID card that you want, which you have to think about. And as I said, the door is open for us to work together in that regard.
True, and I want to thank you for that good gesture this afternoon, basically opening it up to us in Dominica. And I hope that our chairman of the commission, his name is Mr. Duncan Stu, he's a lawyer, he's listening, he may be listening at this time, and the other commissioners there at that commission. So thank you, Mr. Jarret, for that open gesture.
Yes.
I see our time, basically 5:15, it's on the money now. I don't know if anything else you want to say before we leave, or you just want to just kind of play out here till maybe you come back here on some other subsequent program.
What I would say is that, I like what you're doing on this program in terms of engaging with the community, because at the end of the day, it's the people. People are the bottom line, decision makers, and so therefore it's the people of Dominica who must determine what they want to do. And yes, indeed, would certainly work with your commission where possible to share ideas and share expertise and so on. And as I said, we're open to working with Dominica. I'm a Caribbean person, and my goal is for the Caribbean to thrive and prosper.
But just a final question to you, Mr. Jarret, before I let you off. I want to frame that question very carefully, because I don't want to put you in any, situation at this time. Let me make a statement and then ask you the question so you'll get a better idea of where I'm coming at. In Dominica, we have a ruling party in Dominica for 20-something years. That's the Dominica Labour Party. Times and times over, there have been many recommendations made for a freer and fairer electoral system in Dominica. For some reason, for some very strange reason, I want to use that word for now, the ruling party has not seen it fit to implement some of those noble recommendations. And some of these recommendations have come from people like groups like the OAS, CARICOM, the Commonwealth Secretariat, our own people in Dominica, our own civil society groups made up of church, business society, people, have already made recommendations as to what we need in Dominica to clean up the mess we are in. My question to you, sir, is how would you view, or what are your comments on the political directorate at this time who have not seen it fit to at least try, and that's the operating, try to implement some of these recommendations? But we are in this sort of treadmill-like situation, doing the same thing year in, year out, and not getting nowhere. Your thoughts as we close?
The only closing comment to make is that it's the people of Dominica who must make that decision. The people of Dominica are supreme. So I put it back to you.
I love that. I love that. The people, which I know in any democracy, the people really have the power.
Yes, that's correct.
Mr. Jarret, I wanted to thank you very much this afternoon, sir.
Thank you for having
me. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll be back whenever you want.
Sure. Thank you, brother. Thank you, indeed. Tell Miss Miller hello for me. She's my point person getting to guys like you at the commission.
Yeah, she does work hard at it, I must tell you. she didn't give him much choice.
She's always so willing, always so pleasant, welcoming, and she gets back to me on time, and we have a good rapport. So I want to thank you and thank her and all the members of the commission as we try to not just make Dominica's situation better, not just Jamaica, but us in this region. I mean to say we are one people. And what affects one directly has the potential to affect the other indirectly. So I want to thank you for your good work, and let us continue to keep that line of communication open, sir.
Those were the words from Martin Luther King in his letter from Birmingham jail.
Well, that is one of my mentors here, so I picked that up there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Jarret.